Ever since it was launched, the Toyota Innova has been the king of the MPV segment, and no competitor has been able to dethrone it so far. It's just knocked everyone out of its path. But very recently, Tata have launched the Hexa, and they have upped their game. In the meanwhile, Toyota have also upped the prices of the Innova. So does that make a difference? Well, for the first time, the Innova has been offered in an automatic variant, so we thought we'd pit the two automatics together to find out if the Hexa is not only value but good enough otherwise to dethrone the king of the segment. Let's first take a look at the prices of the top-end variants of both cars we're comparing. Now, that's already a big difference there, but what we need to see is the tried and tested Innova worth that difference? Well, what we found out at the outset, or should we say inside, threw up a surprise. Hop into the inside of the Innova, it does look quite modern and there is a nice flow to the dash. However, there does seem to be a mix and match of too many materials and textures, especially when you compare it to the Hexa, which is smart but simple. In contrast, the Innova feels like it's trying too hard. The quality of plastics in the Innova also feel a little lower as far as this comparison goes. Still, the new semicircular lighting in the roof of the rear seat is a smart touch, and the cabin remains a spacious and practical one with ample storage. The quarter glass in the front pillar also makes visibility around corners better than the Hexa. Now, we always looked at the Innova interior and admired it. It made you feel like you were in a premium car. But in this comparison, the Hexa has really surprised us. It actually feels more premium of the two on the inside, and that's largely down to the materials used. Like soft plastic on the top of the dash, which has a nicer grain. Even the harder plastics over here are not so shiny. The single coloring across the dash, the plastic chrome that's used looks much better. So overall, it lets you feel like you're in a much more premium car. But there are things wrong with this cabin as well. In comparison to the Innova, there really isn't much storage in the central console. The Innova does have the storage at the front. This has only a cup holder and the closed box. So if you're carrying coffee and glasses or a phone, there's one place to put them, or then you have to put them in the closed box, and that's a struggle to get them in and out. Also, this touchscreen is just way too small for a car of this size, but it does have other equipment. Let's take a look at the list of both the cars. Well, that's how they stack up on features, but it's time to check how they match up on space overall. Well, to get into the middle row, you need to open these really large back doors. So there's a nice big access into this back seat. But for once, I'm not going to be doing this test because I'm only 5'3", so that isn't a great representation. And since I have Varun, George, our all of 6 feet tall producer with us today, I'm going to use him to check out the space in the middle row and in the third row. Varun. Well, getting in is a bit of a climb into this back seat, but I think otherwise than that, Varun is pretty comfortable. You have enough space, and I'm going to make him sit behind himself so you can see that he's all of 6 foot tall. He has a good amount of room, and the beauty about the Hexa is its width. There's a lot of width in this car, so there's a lot of space, and you feel like it's roomy. Shall we get into the third row? Yeah, it's a bit fiddly. Trying to get that seat up, there's a lever and access is not all that great. But once you're in, I think Varun has good enough leg room. I think he's a little low to the ground, but it's not too bad. Are you comfortable?
There's a lot of space here, so it's good.
I think the only thing lacking is the headroom, and over a bump or two, Varun might knock his head. But other than that, I think the back seat of the Hexa is really a spacious enough place to be for even a person as tall as him. Next up, the Innova. Varun, it's all yours. I think legroom was more in the Hexa.
Okay.
And I think even the width, you were sitting much further from the other seat. And besides that, how comfortable?
I think the seats on the Hexa were more comfortable, and this one's firmer and flat. So
yeah. So I think overall the Hexa's middle row is better than the Innova. And let's check out the third row and see how that does. Well, the flip and tumble makes it easier access, that's for sure. How's it on legroom?
bad, very bad, actually.
And are you sitting, yeah, you're a little bit more knees up here as well, right?
Yes, yes.
And headroom, you've got a marginal bit more over here, but I think overall,
It's the Hexa.
it's the Hexa. So, Hexa, I think, trumps the Innova middle row or third row. So, for the captain seat version of the both cars, it's definitely the Hexa that trumps the Innova on space and comfort. Now, it may seem at this point that the Hexa is at a clear advantage, but considering that we're comparing automatics, which as a variant are considered more for people who would like to drive themselves, performance and the seat behind the wheel are important. Now, while you have to haul yourself into the Hexa, getting into the Innova is much easier. You can just slide in. And the fact that there are powered seats makes it so much easier to adjust the height. The Hexa, on the other hand, has a manual adjust, so the Innova is already ticking off the right boxes from the front seat. Now, since the Hexa is only offered with a diesel power plant, we are comparing it with the Innova Diesel Auto. The Innova comes with a 2.8-litre engine producing 174 HP and 360 Nm. And the Hexa has the 2.2 Varicore, which produces 156 HP and 400 Nm of torque. Looks interesting on paper, though the Hexa has less power, it produces more torque. So how do they feel out on the road? The Innova's engine definitely feels the stronger of the two. Put your foot down and there's always ample power served up. And whether you're nipping in and out of traffic gaps or cruising down a highway and overtaking, it just comes so easily. Our test figures just put a stamp on our feeling out on the road. The Innova wins the race to 100, and even after that, it just gets stronger and stronger. However, the Hexa does actually do better in initial acceleration, getting off the line a little smarter, which is what makes it feel quite effortless to drive. It may not have the strong mid-range of the Innova or as good a top end, but you never really lack for power whether you're in the city or cruising. And as far as refinement goes, it's definitely the better of the two. Now, the Hexa's engine does make a certain amount of noise, but it is definitely more refined and feels less coarse than the Innova. It's not only in terms of sound, it's also in the way that it delivers, thanks to the gearbox. Now, the engine in the Hexa may not feel as punchy or as quick as that of the Innova, but what does play to its advantage is the gearbox that just shifts cogs so seamlessly, smoothly and quickly. The Innova's gearbox, on the other hand, takes a little while to respond, especially at low revs, and it also shifts up quicker. Still, the way it is geared makes it feel the punchier performer overall, and it does produce the better 20 to 80 and 40 to 100 times. Also, you can counter the little gearbox hiccup by shifting into sport mode, where it holds a gear longer and downshifts a bit quicker. In addition, there are also drive modes. Now, the Innova does additionally offer the options of driving in eco mode if you want more frugality, or then if you don't find this already good engine strong enough, you can flip it into power mode for that little extra zing. Well, as far as performance goes, it's clearly the Innova that wins. Now let's also consider the way they handle. Let's face it, these are not vehicles that are meant to be pushed down a windy section of road, but what we have to find out is how light they are on their feet in city conditions and how planted they feel at cruising speeds. You feel the difference in weight between the two steerings, and the Innova's is much heavier. Maneuvering it in and out of traffic, or then even making a U-turn, it does feel quite heavy and requires more effort. But on the flip side, as you pick up the pace or when you're cruising down a highway, this is the steering that offers more security. It makes you feel more stable, more planted, and even going around corners, it has a better heft to it. The Hexa, on the other hand, feels lighter and more nimble on its feet in the city, but it just doesn't provide the kind of connect or security that the Innova offers at higher speeds. Still, it does claw back some advantage with the fact that although it has more roll, it still feels better around corners. But let's see how they ride over our roads. The ride quality of the Hexa at low speeds is very, very pliant. It obliterates all the bumps, potholes, and it doesn't let much filter through. But as you pick up the pace, there is a bit of movement in this back seat. Now, if you're in city and traffic conditions, it'll be a really comfortable ride. And additionally, to keep you comfortable, especially in hot days like this, is the sunscreen, which is a boon. The Hexa's air vents are also better placed to cool one down immediately. But the Innova provides more creature comforts with the storage for the phone near the charging point and the table to work or eat off. Now, the ride quality of the Innova has always been good, and it still is. It's just that in this comparison, it feels like it has the firmer ride at low speed between the two cars, and it does get caught out over bumps and potholes a little bit more. But when you pick up the pace, it just remains so flat, so calm, so composed, and that's why overall I think this is the better ride quality. And finally, before we talk about how and why we pick a winner, let's see which one is more fuel efficient. Now, we're so used to the Innova trumping its competition that I really didn't expect this fight to be this close. The Hexa's voluminous cabin, its well-packaged interiors, the fact that it performs well makes it a very, very tempting offering, especially considering it's around 4 lakh less than the Innova. But there's no denying the Innova has its strengths. Yes, it may not have a cabin that matches up to the Hexa's in terms of quality and space, but on its own, it's a spacious and well-appointed cabin. And since we are comparing automatics, it's about performance because these are largely going to be owner-driven. And that's where the Innova really shines as far as performance, ride and handling goes. It is definitely the better of the two. Yes, it is more expensive, but those extra bucks that you spend do come with the peace of mind and reliability of the Toyota brand. And that's why, in our opinion, the Innova still remains the king of the segment.